You're listening to the Empathetic Leadership Podcast, Episode 6. Today we're talking about the fifth principle of empathetic leadership, being operationally competent. Hey everybody, Ronnie here. With me as always is my regular co-host Jason. Welcome to the Empathetic Leadership Podcast. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for joining us. The Empathetic Leadership Podcast is produced by Hinderless Media and is released every Monday for your enjoyment. Show notes are found at hinderlessmedia.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show.
Sensational, that's what you are. What are you doing?
How's it going this week, Jason?
It's going well, man. Finally back again for another episode. A little more sleep this time. Not as exhausted as I was last time, so I'm glad to actually get some sleep.
Right. Hey, that's something that can be quite rare in our field. So.
It usually is. Usually we're on, 4 or 6. It's our average, I think. I think that's what we call 6 a good night usually. So,
Right.
I don't know if that's good or not, but
Yeah, well, actually, I'm at the point now where with my new job that I just started this week that I can get like a full 8 now.
must be nice. Must be really nice. I haven't had a full 8 in month. Well, actually, I got one a few weeks ago. I actually got like 10 hours of sleep, which was crazy. But it was so much sleep that I felt kind of weird after waking up. I was just like, where am I? What's my name? You know?
Right, it's like sleep drunk. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it. Sleep drunk. So,
Right. Well, this week we're going to be talking about something that's really important. Something we don't really think about a whole lot. Either we don't think about it or we overthink it at times.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be an extreme as far as the way people think about leading people, and that's being operationally competent as a leader.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't even really think about it, but it's a super important part of leadership. Obviously, if you don't know how everything's supposed to work in whatever business you're in, using our examples, we work posts, as security officers. If you don't know what is going on with your post, which actually I'm not gonna name names, but we have some supervisors that are like that don't know actually what their posts are supposed to do, and it's really hard for somebody else that's like below you rank wise, or in any business to like trust you if they're like, oh, this guy has no idea what he's doing. I know more about his job than he does. And so then I think from then it's like it's really hard to lead somebody because it's like if they don't trust you, as we've talked about in a previous podcast, they're not gonna. It's really hard to lead somebody. It's just they're not gonna want to listen to what you have to say as easily.
Right, and then there's also the opposite end of that. You've got some organizations that when they promote from within, they want the person who's the most operationally competent, and they don't necessarily look for the person who has good leadership skills. So it's kind of like there's these two extremes, and we really got to find like what the happy medium is there.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about what that means, how we get there. How do we avoid those two extremes? Because we need to be operationally competent. We need to know how to work our job, but at the same time, we got to understand that our team members, they are the experts. They're the ones that are doing these jobs day in and day out. And I'm going to tell you something. If you're a leader and you're doing these jobs day in and day out, then you're leading wrong, because of the fact that you have to be doing the leadership things. You have to be taking care of your people. You have to be coaching your people. You have to be training them. Those are the things that you need to be doing day in and day out. So these people will become more competent in that job eventually. But you have to know enough in order to help people in situations that may be different than what they're used to.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be tough too, because like for us, when you get moved around to different places a lot, and you can use this in the other types of businesses where if you go to a different type of company, maybe you're in the same style of business, but it's a completely different company with a different product or something, so you're not 100% how that product works or how even the business or the company itself works and how the hierarchy and all that other stuff. It can be difficult. I think the key is like step one as a leader, like definitely know what is going on, kind of know the way of the land. And that's why I think it does take us some time anytime you go somewhere new to learn the lay of the land, as I said, and learn how know that you really want to know it in and out. I almost kind of look at it as you're like the quarterback in a sense, and that you need to be the first one in and the last one out most days, because number one, that shows your employees that you're committed and that you really want this position. And it can sometimes it can be tougher going to a place where you're not known and people are like, who the heck is this guy that's just coming in
Right.
here, just getting this position? Why haven't I? Because if they don't hire within, they go with an outside hire, you're already at a disadvantage because these people aren't going to trust you because they're
Right.
going to say, who the heck is this person?
Yeah, if you come in trying to act like you know everything, then you're
not-
automatically like you're gonna alienate people. They're gonna look at you and just like you said, they're gonna look at you and just be like, who is this person?
Yeah.
Who knows nothing about our side, that knows nothing about this business, who knows nothing about the work that I do every day. Who is this guy who's coming in and acting like, you know, he's big crap, you know, so to say.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you've got to take the time to become operationally competent.
Yeah, and I think that's step one for sure. And I really like kind of what you said before was that, you know, it's not everything, though, at the same time. You know,
Right.
to be a good leader doesn't necessarily mean you have to be, like, insanely operationally competent. You also have to know how to get people to complete, like, a project or get people to complete whatever mission or job that they have. I think previous episodes we were mission focused. Well, in order to be mission focused, yeah, you have to be operationally competent, but you also need to know how to get people to achieve this goal. And I think a lot of it comes down to trust. And going back to what I said before, I'm kind of backtracking and forth, going back and forth here. But what I was saying before is that to build that trust, you have to show people that you're committed to it by learning the job. And
Right.
sometimes you're promoted within, which I think is a best case scenario in a lot of ways, because not only does it show other employees, hey, they're willing to promote people within if you work hard enough for it.
Right.
But also, this person knows what he's doing. He knows the job. I already know him because I've worked with him for X amount of years, and he got the promotion because he deserved it. He was here all the time. He did a really good job, and he rose above everybody else, and that's why he got the position. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's you have a little bit of a disdain for the person that is gets that position above you. But I think at the end of the day, it's up to the person who's in that higher position to gain that trust and to get people to want to buy in.
Right, because one of the things with it is you've got to support your team, and that's what being operationally competent. That's what it comes down to is supporting your team. Number one, because our teams are gonna come to us with the questions. If we don't know the process, we can't help.
Yeah, like not at all. Because I'm just be like, I don't know, and you can't use that as you can't say that as a supervisor. You can't just say I don't know. If anything, if you don't know at that moment, say I actually don't have the answer to it, and I'll just find the answer, and then go find that answer as quick as you can. So at least you can tell people like, hey, this is actually the process, and the reason why sometimes you do it. I know in security there's a lot of things of we need to do these things, and it's like, okay, but why are we doing these things? And if you know why, then it's a lot easier to explain to people.
Right. Well, let me ask you this question though, because you talked about if you don't know the answer to the question, you need to figure out the answer. What happens if you're in a situation where there's no way for you to figure out necessarily what the proper answer is?
Well, I guess it depends on the situation. That's a really tough question. Thank you for that. But no, I think it really depends on the situation. Like if we always use the examples that we know the most about. There's always a reason why we're doing something, and there's going to be somebody that put that policy or thing that we're doing in place.
Right.
So it's always going to be somebody you can find like, why are we doing this? And then they can explain blah, 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 blah. Now, if it's in some type of business and maybe it's some type of new thing that nobody really knows yet, that's where I kind of get stuck. And I'm just like, the only way I can think about it is that you ask somebody that is maybe whatever the situation is that maybe knows more about that situation than you and ask for advice. I think the key is like we always talk about on this podcast, don't be afraid to ask for advice and don't be afraid to learn.
Yeah, and I do think that there are situations that are going to arise sometimes where you won't be able to get an answer in a time enough manner.
In a timely manner, yeah, too. Yeah.
So one of the things that we have to do, this actually ties back into that being operationally competent. If we're operationally competent and a situation arises that we don't know the answer to, we don't have the opportunity to get the answer, just by being competent within our operations, we can actually come to a conclusion we're going to go with this, I'm going to make a decision. I'll make an executive decision here that we're going to do this in this situation. And the best way to make the best decision in that situation is to have enough competence within that job, to make a decision. And, sometimes it's not going to be the right decision. But you can't be afraid to be wrong.
Right. Yeah. I think we were talking about this earlier. Not being afraid to make mistakes, and I think as a leader, as a supervisor, you have to just go into it knowing you're going to make mistakes, but to take it on the chin, as they say, and basically just move on from it and get better from it, learn from it. I'll use an example that actually a friend of mine told me from George Bush, obviously a former president. And whether or not, I'm not trying to get political here, so whether or not you agree with his politics or not, it's the word that the words that he said here actually made a lot of sense on how he led as far as a president goes. And that was basically he made the decisions based on the information that he had at the time.
Right.
So, and a lot of times you could argue, was it good information, bad information, whatever. Like I said, not here to argue politics. What I'm here to say is, whatever business you're in is just use whatever information you have the best to make the best decision you can. And even if it's a mistake, you can at least go to your people and say, hey, this is the information I had. This is all these are the decisions I made. If you can explain your thought process to people, especially if it's a big mistake, a lot of times people will be more forgiving. They'll be like, oh, I totally understand what you were thinking there. And maybe even if it's someone that's beneath you, they'll go, as far as rank goes, they'll go, oh, well, and if this ever happens again, you should try this. Maybe they will even give you advice. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes people will try to undercut you, and that's their own prerogative. But I think if you're a really, truly good leader and people like working for you and working around you, they're going to try to help you as much as they can.
Right. Another aspect of being operationally competent is, we do need to lead from the front. That's very cliched. You hear that all the time. But really what that means is we need to be willing to step into jobs whenever the need arises. We actually got an example. One of my former coworkers at the facility that I was right before I took on this new job this week, he messaged me the other day saying he was at Post 1 because they were lacking people. And if you aren't operationally competent, you can't fill those holes when they arise. Now, obviously, that's not ideal. As leaders, we need to be able to be mobile and be able to get around all of our people. But there are going to be times when that happens. And we will fail our team if we don't know the jobs, if we're not competent within those jobs.
And for the people listening, Post 1 is a truck gate, and it's one of the more complicated positions that we have around in our area. So that's why it's kind of a big deal, because if you don't know what you're doing out there, especially at the site that it's at, it can become an issue pretty quick. And that works with any type of company for the most part. I mean, there's some companies, obviously, once you start getting to like corporation type stuff where you're maybe a digital designer or a coder or whatever, like within reason, you're not going to have somebody that's in accounting all of a sudden become a coder. Like,
right.
It obviously takes a lot of time to get into that. But within the same category, within the same industry, if you're coding something else and maybe Bob, we'll say, gets sick and it's whatever he's coding is due on a Friday and it's like, hey, we need somebody to pick up the slack.
Right.
I can tell you, as a person, if I know that this other person can come in and finish the job for him and he's willing to step up as a teammate, like that's going to go a long way for me and be like, this guy's the next leader for us, I
mean, any organization worth its weight, whenever they have those specialized fields like that, are going to have leaders within those specialized fields. So if you do have, a software engineer, a coder that is off, they're going to have a senior engineer who can step into that job.
Right.
And so it's important for those leaders, even within those specialized fields, and especially like when you're talking about a field like coding, like any kind of engineering where people work on specific projects, it's really important for the leader to know all the projects that are ongoing and be competent within those projects. So it's really even, you have that same effect, just in a different way within those more specialized fields.
Yeah. It all kind of works. It all comes down to the bottom line is you got to know what the heck you're doing. Whatever the job is, it could be the most simple job in the world. If you don't know that simple job in and out, as a supervisor, how are you going to train somebody on it? And we actually I have a recent example of that, of an officer not knowing at all what he was doing. He seemed like he knew what he was doing, but he royally messed things up so badly that it's caused issues with the company. And we are obviously like a customer service based type of industry, and so the customer is not super happy about it. And that being the case, it's kind of up to us. You know, I kind of consider myself not only as a leader as far as supervising shifts, but being someone that goes to all of our posts and works them. It's like, I feel like it's kind of up to me at sometimes, since I come from the office, basically, to kind of like smooth things over. So it's like, because this guy didn't really know what he was doing, it's okay. We're not all like this. You know?
Right.
Trust me. You know.
Right. Well, you know, it's you hit on something really important there, which is the training aspect. You know, if you know, that's an important part of dealing with people in general, especially as a leader, is like making sure your people are developed. And actually having competency within your job actually allows for that better training. Of course, with that particular situation, you know, there may be other factors of the individual didn't care. You know, you do have those things kind of happen. Mm-hmm. But if we are competent within the jobs, we can actually train and develop our people better within those jobs. And you see that, you know, a lot where like people, you know, you especially within security or even a lot, you know, other high turnover type industries where there might be somebody who's been in a job for 3-4 weeks and they try to train somebody, and then the person they're training ends up with bad habits.
Yep.
It's because that person that was training them wasn't operationally competent. So as leaders, we need to be so in those situations we can actually work on developing our people as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, and it just comes down to being able to train people in a way that kind of the way I'm trying to explain it is basically being able to train people in a way that like it can be learned a lot easier, because like there's certain places that we go to operationally it can be really complicated,
right?
But it doesn't need to be complicated in the sense of how you train somebody in it. And I think sometimes with different places that we overcomplicate things instead of breaking it down to like, this is why we're doing it. A lot of times I try to find the why at a post or at a company of like, why are we, and we talked about this in previous episodes, like what is the why? You find that why and then you go, here's what we're doing. And It's like, oh, so we're doing this thing, that makes sense why we're doing the X, Y, and Z for this thing. You know?
It's almost like all this ties together.
You know, I thought so. You know, it seemed like it because, you know, it's like each episode kind of just goes into another, and it's just like, you know, it's amazing. I don't know who wrote this, but whoever did did a great job.
Thank you. No, but seriously, you know, that's for anybody that, if this is the first episode you're listening to, like, all of our points here, they all interconnect. I'm sure those of you that have listened from the very beginning, you're probably tired of hearing us say that.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure if anybody's listening for the first time, they know that. Like, all of our points for what makes empathetic leadership, they all connect. And that's what's important, is like knowing all these different aspects and how they tie together. Because, you know, another thing that we talked about before was being people focused.
Yeah.
And one of the things whenever you focus on people is like that development, the training. But when you do train and develop somebody, you also have to follow up, whether that means within the training or within coaching or anything like that. And that's another thing that is really important with being operationally competent, is it actually helps your follow-up. Because if you don't know the job, then how are you going to be able to follow up with somebody to make sure that they're doing the job correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't. It's impossible, because you just, it looks good to me, so you just move on, and it's like, well, they might not be doing the job right. And then, like the example I gave before, you have a situation like that where clients get mad because they're not getting what they expect.
Right. And it's actually like perfect segue there, because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we talk about like the people part of it. But one of our things as leaders, too, is we have to focus on the big picture. That's where the client comes into it, or even, you know, the leaders that are above us, you know, is we've got to focus on the big picture in order to make our teams run the most efficiently. And at the end of the day, if I don't have competency, then I can't understand every piece in the overall puzzle of our organization.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, and it's kind of like, where do you go from there if you don't really know exactly what's going on? And then not only that, but like I said before, not knowing how everything works and how to explain things to your employees just makes you look weak as a leader. And so you start losing trust, and then once you lose trust, then all of a sudden no one's going to be listening to you, and then everything just starts kind of crumbling apart. They kind of build on each other, kind of snowball effects, and before you know it, it's like you have a mess on your hands, and the only way to fix that is either having somebody new come in or learning it, really building that trust, and relearning your job, basically.
Yeah, and you have a lot of places that have a lot of turnover because it falls apart, like you said. It's like a watch.
Yeah.
If you take apart a watch and you misplace one piece, because every piece has a purpose within that watch,
right?
That watch won't work properly. And the same thing happens to our organizations, but we have to know what those pieces do and where they go in order to make sure that it's put together correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it's like you said, I think being people focused is important because you said every little piece, has its purpose, and if without it, it doesn't work right, and that's exactly right. Like, without having every single employee there doing the job that they do, then you don't have a job, you don't have a post, you don't have a company, you don't. It's just you don't have anything that you really, want, or you just don't have a company in general. I know.
Right.
I kind of refer back to like being a musician and stuff. I always said that our fans is the most important thing, and that's true because without fans, without people believing in the product you're putting out, which obviously goes into customers, but I almost considered in that case it's different because they're a part of what you're doing, and without them, you're nothing. You're just a band in a garage or in a basement or whatever, just playing music like a crazy person, And
right.
So without that and without people in the company making your job possible, like you don't have anything. And same thing with if I can use that example again, if you don't have music, then how are you a musician? You're not promoting anything.
I think music's a perfect example because every instrument comes together to create this harmonious sound,
right,
that creates the overall song that you're playing.
And each has a purpose and a reason.
Yeah, and if one is messed up, well, then the entire song is messed up.
Yeah.
If you get a drummer that's off beat,
it's gonna sound bad.
It's gonna sound bad. If you've got a guitar that's off key,
or out of tune, or whatever, or a singer that can't sing or doesn't sing well, I'm a bass player for all those out there wondering. So a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't even notice the bass," and I'm like, "You say that, but go to a song and remove the bass from it, and you're gonna notice that song doesn't sound as good anymore."
Exactly.
That's the thing. It's like every little piece has a purpose,
and that's our people in the organization.
Exactly.
And we've got to know what that piece does at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And part of that is
because where do you fit it?
Yeah, and knowing where those pieces fit also assists us in providing our leadership with better insight as far as how to make our organizations run more efficiently.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. More efficiently. That's a good way of looking at things because if you know the operations behind something, maybe you'll see something that is not as good in it, and you can improve it, and you can make it more efficient. And that makes you more valuable now all of a sudden because you're like coming up with ideas. You're bringing things to the table. You're not just some guy going through the motions or a girl going through the motions. You're now somebody that's like has ideas and is willing and able to improve operations, and that's really important because if you're not really willing to do any of that, it's like what kind of I always look at jobs in any position as what kind of value do you have,
right?
Because you're there because you have some type of value, even if it's the lowest level, whatever job you want to reference, you still have value because they're like they count on you to be this person's going to show up on time and do what they're going to do. Now, obviously, at that level, it's very low expectations and low responsibility. And as you move up, the responsibility gains and the expectations gain, as well as the money. So it just makes perfect sense that as you keep going up, the more proficient you become in your job. Theoretically, you should be continuously moving up the ranks. Obviously, that doesn't always happen that way.
Right. Which it's time for me to take the glasses off.
Uh-oh.
Gotta get on.
It means he's serious, ladies and gentlemen. It means he's serious.
I really want to talk to our senior leaders right now. really specifically middle management.
You listening? You listening, people?
And it's like I'm gonna kind of call out our organization. If anybody knows who we work, they're gonna know what I'm talking about.
It's not hard. You Google it.
The thing with when you are brought something by your leadership team in order to help improve the efficiency of the jobs of your team members, you've got to listen. Like, I get that you have, well, this shouldn't be that hard, or it shouldn't be. And it's like, but your processes as a middle manager that you're managing are the processes that are making it that difficult. Mm-hmm. I've actually dealt with this, and it's so annoying. Actually, here recently, right before I moved, dealing with a process that is so overly complicated that we've set up our team members for failure. And I have, as a leader, being proficient in that job, went to my senior leadership and talked about how it is not feasible in the long term to meet the goals of the company because of the way that it's set up. And so for all of you like middle management out there, like when your leadership team brings something like that to you, it's your responsibility to listen. Because you're not the one, just like how we're, as junior leaders, you're not the one that is in the field working the jobs, every day in and out.
Right.
In middle management, you're not the one interacting with these people every day in and out that are doing those jobs. So your leadership team, they are the ones who know how it's affecting the people. And if you don't listen to that, then you're just as wrong as a junior leader that doesn't listen to their people about any of their issues. And you're going to discourage people. It's going to make people go, well, what's the point? And that's the thing about being, empathetic is like having that understanding when these situations get brought to you.
Are the glasses going back on yet? Or okay, yeah.
You're safe again.
I know not to say anything until the glasses go back on. I just don't, you never know what's going to happen.
I might snap at you.
Yeah. It's like, listen, Jason, you're wrong, actually.
Right.
Everything you said was exactly right, because I think it's even more important the higher up you get, because that's how much more responsibility is on you for things to succeed. And if you're not listening to people that know your people better than you, because the bigger the company gets, like the vice president of our company, there is no way that he or she, not going to, like I said, not going to name names, not going to give it away or whatever, but there's no way they know every single person in the company. There's just no way. Like, there's not enough time in the day. There's so much effort. It would be amazing, but there's just no way. So you have to delegate that. And that's a huge part of, I think, management and leadership, is being able to delegate to people that you trust. It's kind of like any type of leader in history. That's what you do. You delegate to people you trust, and then they go and delegate, and then it goes down the ranks. And so that's how you get things done, and that's how you improve things as well. And if you don't listen, how do you improve? Like, how are you going to improve anything if you're like, nope, I know everything about everything, and this is the way we're going to do it. And I understand there's times where you feel like you're almost bound to, like, you can't do these things because your higher ups are telling you no. That's the part where I come in, where I'm saying what we were talking about before, where it's like, take some risks if you're able to. I mean, obviously, if it's going to get you fired, that's a huge risk to take, especially if you have a family and you've got all these different things. I understand. But, like, don't be afraid to make a mistake, and sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Obviously, don't do anything illegal, but what I'm saying or unethical. But what I'm saying is listen to what your people are saying, and since you're in the trenches with them, or if you're higher up and this person is in the trenches with them, go, you know what, maybe there's some validity to what they have to say, and maybe making a change, and even like just trying it out, like try it out, see what happens. One of my favorite things in songwriting is you'll throw suggestions out. It's kind of like writing jokes. It's the same thing. You throw suggestions out. A lot of them are terrible. Eventually, you hit on one that's good. Right. And that's the point, is that you listen to every single one. You try every single one. Sometimes it's annoying because you're doing the same thing over and over again. But if you can get to the point to where you've made your processes better, and then people down below realize, hey, they're listening to me up in management. Not only does it make them feel really good because they're like, I feel appreciated because they at least, the vice president of the company is willing to listen to little old me down here. Like, wow, I'm fired up and I enjoy working with this company. I think that's the whole point of this podcast, is finding a way to make your company enjoyable enough to want to stay and work with them. Because I think loyalty nowadays is just not there, and there's a very good reason why it's not there, and it's because there's no loyalty from the company to employees, so there's no employee to the company anymore.
Right. Well, man, it looks like
time got away from us again.
Time got away from us again.
Took your quote away from me this time.
You did. I'm kind of upset with you now. I might have to take the glasses off again.
Keep them on.
So we definitely appreciate you guys out there in listener land taking your time out to spend a little bit of time with us. If we had the opportunity, we'd spend a lot more time with you, but we want to respect your time.
Yeah.
So definitely appreciate you guys being here today.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun talking about this topic, and I can't wait for next week.
Right. Well, guys, that is it today for the Empathetic Leadership Podcast. Thank you, Jason, as always, for your insight, and thank you to each of you that have joined us. We hope you learned something today that you can use to make life a little bit easier for you, your employees, and your senior leaders. If you have any suggestions to make this podcast better, feel free to email us at media@hinderlessmedia.com. And don't forget to review us on your favorite podcast provider. Have a good week, and we will see you next Monday.
See ya.
Sensation.